Okay, good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to the first webinar in this new series, Reasoning with a Project Delivery Manager. We have here with us tonight our presenter, Mr. Mark Burnett, and we'll get into his introduction in just a bit. But I want to welcome you all. I'm Karina Dice, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. And I'm excited about this new initiative because it is geared towards engaging you, empowering you in the space of project management, whether big or small, in your daily lives, in your businesses, whatever the situation may be. It's geared at, empowering us to have, engaging conversations, engaging discussions that ultimately will have you feeling, empowered, welcome, comfortable in a space that we can share and influence each other's development. Now, before we jump into it, I just want to go through a bit of housekeeping, just to let you know that this is a voice-activated call, so your mics will be muted until we begin the engaging and interactive discussion and the Q&A segment, just to prevent, anyone from unmuting and disrupting the speaker. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be archived by our YouTube channel, so you may appear in the recordings, so be mindful of that. Now, before we jump into it, I just want to give you a little bit of background on this particular webinar series that we've come up with that should be monthly. So we're asking you to come back to get what you can get from it. Bring your friends over to this side, bring your relatives over so that we can all benefit from this, conversation that we all should be a part of in this stage of our lives. So this will be a fireside chat discussion format via Zoom. As I said, it will be monthly, and it will be discussions with guests, audience, and reasoning with Mark to empower, encourage, and motivate you via humbling thoughts, candid and collaborative conversations, feasible support, and initiatives. This interactive series will be where you feel welcome, comfortable, and explore lessons learned from peers, partners, and industry leaders for supporting and improving project delivery. Now, Mark is aware that his resilience, his insights, and his knowledge he has gained throughout his career has given him ready-made experiences, defining and overseeing resources that can help you on the same path and support businesses overcome challenges, businesses to build and lead successful projects. His objective is to share diverse perspectives, offer practical tips and proven solutions. Project failures and successes can lift you up and add maximum returns to your journey. So sit back, relax, and be ready to just be interactive with Mark this evening. So I'm going to jump in to introducing our brilliant speaker for this evening. He is a project delivery manager and, of course, a UE alumnus. So welcome our Pelican, Mr. Mark Burnett. He is the host of this project series, the project management series at the UE. He's also host of a digital transformation webinar series at the PMO Leader, and he's the official judge and reviewer of the committee at PMOGA. He's a natural encourager and collaborator who empowers via an adaptive, customer-centric, and shared value-driven obsession to execute tasks in an effective approach to foster creative business climate of introspection, learning, and growth. Mark believes that true service comes from servanthood and is a servant to others, which is his main strength. His invaluable wisdom, experience, and knowledge to budding professionals at the UE. He continues to exemplify a true UE Pelican by nurturing the young and definitely by giving back. Nowadays, Mark helps teams to manage complex projects, risks, deadlines, change technology, software solutions, and channels of accountability to solve their biggest setbacks in enterprise class infrastructures based on importance, sense of urgency, and return on investment, helping busy leaders with their time, boosting productivity, resilience, and recruitment, taking their business from a distressed position, helping teams become the most powerful version of themselves, building skills through project management and heart-based life lessons. Having worked in immense high-pressure situations with Ericsson and other technology operators, Mark has supported a range of projects for over a decade, including major digital transformation that delivers significant benefit to service providers in the Caribbean and Central America. He has a solid customer focus on medium to high risk priorities and his experience extends across a wide range of ICT and telecom technologies. Likewise, he has managed large-scale, macro-level network deployments, negotiating with external partners and leading cross-functional teams to accelerate performance. As an active mentor with meaningful contributions, Mark has served as PMI and Red Cross volunteer, mentor at Helping Hands, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and liaison officer at various football tournaments. Moreover, he has guided teams to create solutions for Hackathon COVID-19 and initiatives to motivate women in technology and youth in STEM. Mark is ardent about community service and has been helping since his youth. Mark is a certified PMP, Agile Scrum Master, and registered engineer. His view is that a blend of project management, technology, and engineering can be fun. Besides this, his multicultural exposure has given him deep interest in these areas: business and digital transformation, productivity and motivation, executive decision-making, and third-party management. Now, I've taken up a bit of time, so I'm going to turn over to Mark. But in the meantime, let us know how you're feeling, where you're joining us from, and what you're looking forward to for this discussion. Over to you, Mark.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're joining from. Thank you so much for that, Karina. I'm just humbled once more. It's a feeling of nostalgia, you know, to reconnect with my alma mater. It's always a pleasure to share with the wider community. However, I just want to say a few thank yous, you know, because this wouldn't be possible without you guys. So thank you again to the UE IAD Alumni Relations family. Big shout out to you. Shout out to the soft and life skill series at UE. I think you guys are doing a wonderful job, you know, building future leaders. And also, you can find them on all the platforms, UE Alumni Online, you know, you name the platforms. Feel free, guys, just reconnect with the UE alumni community and just get in touch with these wonderful series. Also, I just want to give a big shout out to one of our proud sponsors, to Prezi Fitness, you know, one of the vibrant fitness trainers around, you know. Big shout out to you, Prezi. You can find him on Instagram, Prezi Fitness. Last but not least, I also want to give a big shout out to the MBF group, the exquisite Ferran's Exquisite Photo Studio. You could find Ferran's Exquisite Photo Studio on Facebook, Ferran's Exquisite Photo Studio, and on Instagram, Ferran's Photo _ graphic media. Thank you so much, guys, for my personal branding. You guys have been doing a wonderful job, and you guys have been supporting this show between Econo Projects, partnered with the UE IAD Alumni Relations. And thank you, guys. Thank you for this gift. I want to say thank you, Ferran's Exquisite. So to move along, I just want to ensure that, you know, I truly believe that everything is a project, you know, even this webinar here, it's a project. So I had to make sure that after this, I'm looking for an amazing session. There are some takeaways for everyone. We could learn, we could exchange, and we could improve ourselves. So at the end of this webinar, one of the takeaways, project leadership pertains to building better relationships and behaviors, run more effective meetings and one-on-one sessions in leading some of your projects. Another takeaway is well-defined goals to improve team effectiveness, define communication plan, keeps your team aligned and focused on the task at hand, clear and organized plans to collaborate teams, clearly define roles and responsibilities to eliminate confusion. I think this one is very important. This is a very important takeaway to be empathetic, not sympathetic. So a lot of us are in complex project situations where we're caught in the middle. And it's just about empathetic leadership over sympathetic leadership to ensure that no one is left behind and we could move forward as a team. Receive new knowledge, meet new friends at the end of project. That's what we do. That's very important. At the end of a tough project, it's always good to catch up with a new body that you have met in the tedious process, you know, or to probably have a celebratory session with the client. Another takeaway is project management tools that will help us to increase efficiency. This is very important. You know, we're talking about small and big projects. So in small projects, there are certain steps or strategies that we generally take based on the criteria of a small project. And in terms of a big project, there are certain tools, techniques, you know, that could be used in order to increase efficiency. Another one is to prioritize and execute projects, you know, will help you just the art. I believe project management is an art and a science. So just by prioritizing and executing projects this art and this science will help us in our personal and our professional life. So these are just a few takeaways that I would like us to have in our arsenal at the end of this webinar. Karina?
I'm here, Mark.
Yes. So moving along. So this webinar is about sharing my personal insights and experiences on projects that I've worked across the Caribbean and Central America. So in total, I've worked on over 25 plus major projects across the Caribbean and Central America. And two quotes, two proverbs that I generally take with me is the first one: being a leader is not about having a title. It's about having followers and leading by example and influence. So what this means to me, it means that it's very important for a good project manager to facilitate, to be a servant leader, to have critical listening skills, you know, to bring the troops together to deliver on the premise of internal or external clients. The second proverb is, if you think that you're leading and no one is following you, then you're only taking a walk. For me, this one is very powerful, because I believe project management, 70%, 75%, it's about people management, relationship building, managing stakeholders. You know, it's very important to work with people in order to get the job done, because project management is about people. While you might have the tools, the techniques, you know, the technical knowledge, project management is about people. And some of the best project managers are project managers who are servant leaders, who are able to rally the troops. So before we get into leading successful projects, big or small, you know, a lot of times when we're in the trenches, we talk about what is a project, but sometimes we don't talk about what is project management, you know, because a project is not able to be managed or be led without the skills of project management. And as I said before, project management is an art. It's a science. So just to share a brief idea of what project management is. So pretty much project management is the use of specific skills knowledge, tools, and techniques to deliver something of value to people. So when we're talking about a project, this is the reason why we do a project. We're trying to use skills, knowledge, tools, and techniques to deliver something of value to people. As I said, project management is about people. So say, for example, you're expanding sales in a new department, you have to have a certain knowledge. You have to have the right people with the right skills, and you might need to have some tools at your disposal. And of course, there would possibly be a technique that you would use to deliver, to expand the sales department. And at the end of that, you're actually bringing bottom line value to the business unit. So that's what I mean by project management. Project is not possible without the skill, the art, or the science of project management. Now, what is also important is what is a project? Why do businesses, why do communities, why do organizations do projects? But let's look at it. A project is a temporary effort to create value through a unique product or service. That's really a project. So whenever a business or whatever organization runs a project, they are trying to realize some return on investment, or they are trying to create a unique product, So that's what it is when there are organizations out there that they only run projects because that's how they achieve their bottom line revenues, by doing projects. That's how they seek or they have return on their investments, by doing projects. So, it's very important for us to understand what is a project, because in almost every business's organizations, there is some level of operation, and sometimes you have persons say, why am I doing this? Why do we need to do this? Because they're actually in operations, and they're not seeing the linkage between a new project to be started and what they are doing in operation. So it's very important for us to understand that a project is a temporary effort to create value. And for example, in operations, operation is just a continuous effort, so it's not doing anything unique, to add something new to drive the business forward. So it's very important to understand these two key terms when talking about leading successful projects, big or small. So let's just look at some facts and figures before we move on to what is considered a small project and what is considered a big project. So based on a recent report from the project management statistics, it is saying that 70% of all projects fail. Can you imagine that? 70% of all projects fail. Projects fail for various reasons. Can mean budget overrun. It can mean we deliver something that is outside the quality criteria of the client. Many different reasons why projects fail. Another fact is 42% of companies don't understand the need or importance of project management. This is a very, very important point, because when you're in this kind of situation, it is very difficult to get buy-in from senior management or from the client, because maybe for a particular project, you need to take a particular project management approach that is not understandable. Maybe you need a tool that is not understandable, Maybe you need to make you need to come up with a particular strategy with the team, and that's not understandable, so the project, it could mean that, project failed because of this, because the company doesn't really have a project management culture. Another point is 62% of successfully completed projects had supportive sponsors. So again, here, project management, it's about stakeholder management. As I said before, it's about people management. It's about getting the right persons on board. It's about managing your stakeholder expectations. Another one is 55% of project managers cite budget overrun as a reason for project failure. Can you imagine this? There are just so many reasons. And in adverse, you could have a project that has a budget overrun and the project is successful because in the client's eyes, you've delivered something that is satisfactory to them. Or it could be a case where proper change management approaches were made along the way, against the baseline, and all this was agreed with the client. So even though there was a budget overrun, at the end, the team, the project is able to recover those costs, those sunk costs, because of proper project management. As I said before, another one, stakeholder engagement is the most valuable PM process. Again, if you're working in a project and you have your CEO and your CTO, your chief executive officer, your chief technical officer, and you have your functional managers, of course, you will manage your expectations of your chief technical officer and your chief executive officer differently from your departmental managers. What's their interest? How do they want you to communicate? What are their priorities? What's their strategy? And you try to align all these things with your project management approach. And then this is a very interesting one. The project management industry is set to grow by 6.6 trillion by the end of 2020. So it means that right now in the pandemic, we're actually in a project economy, because even right now, we're seeing a lot of organizations that are doing business transformation. They are doing digital transformation. So it means that a lot of businesses, organizations, they are managing projects. Some may know that they are running a project, some may not know. Very interesting point here. What is considered a small versus a big project? I've seen this, I've done quite a few projects, and you will hear the buzzword, small project, big project. And we didn't define, or we didn't have a criteria as to why do we say a project is big. It's very important to have this criteria, because it's easier for the business and the organization to prioritize and deliver projects. So, for example, a project is, if a small project has a big impact on the bottom line of the business or the company, that project could be considered a big project. If a so-called big project has a small impact, that so-called big project could be considered a small project. But all this depends on the business, that particular business, that organization. What do you consider a small project or a big project? It could be considered a small project because of risk factors, the risk that are involved in the project, the dedicated resources. Generally in big projects have more dedicated resources than small projects. But it's very important to understand within your organization, within your team, what is a big project? What is a small project? Also, time, you know. It is generally said, you know, and I've seen this in my experience too, small projects generally take maybe 3 to 6 months to be completed, while a bigger project might take 6 to 1 year, a year and a half, you know. So it just all depends, you know, the team size, you know, what is the size of the team? Smaller projects generally have smaller teams, but maybe a smaller project can be complex because of the skills areas that are involved, the objective, the solutions that are at play. All these things can define whether a project is small or a project is big. How the projects affect the business unit, the decision makers that are involved. So you might have some small projects that only the project manager is the only key decision maker. And within that business or within that organization, it is considered a small project. While a bigger project, you might have the CEO, CFO, CTO.
Hi, Mark. Sorry to cut you. But
Yeah.
the audience is asking if you could share the slides so that they can follow a little bit along. I don't know if that's possible for you.
Sure. Let's check in the options. How is it okay now?
Yes, we're seeing the slide. If you could probably go on slideshow, so it fills the screen.
I think there are some glitches on my end here.
No problem. We can. I can see it. So I'm sure the rest of the other persons can also see if you're not able to go on slideshow.
Yeah, there are some glitches on my end. Are you able to take control from your end?
I can. Just give me a moment. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. You just let me know what slide you're on.
On what is considered small versus big project. Can you help me with the slides as well, if that's fine for you, Karina? I'll just let you know when to move on.
Is this the one that you're on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you may go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this leaves us with two other critical points. You know, how do we consider a project small or big? You know, it could mean that there are political implications, you know, and based on that particular business or organization, they would use this to determine whether this particular project is small or big. Available funding and the kind of deliverables that are expected from the project. Can move on. Kindly move forward. Karina?
It's changed to major challenges.
Yeah, it's okay now. Thanks. So yes, so leading successful projects, big or small. You know, we've talked about what is considered a small or a big project. Now, small or big project, you know, from my experience, I think a project is a project, you know, and so as I said before, the art and science of project management will still take its natural course, whether the project is small or whether the project is big, you know. But one of the things that I've noticed with all these projects that I've worked on is initiating and planning is very, very important. You know, getting the right people together at the right time, you know, having a clear communication plan, having a clear stakeholder plan. As I said before, it's very important to manage your stakeholders' expectation and their interests. You know, different stakeholders, they have different interests in the project. And it's very important to have these plans in place because this helps you to build relationship, which is very critical in managing a small or a big project. Because a lot of times persons might just look at a project and say, hey, this project is small. And so we take certain things for granted. So in terms of the initiating and planning of that particular project, we don't pay enough attention, and then we end up with scope creep, you know. So one of the major challenges I think is planning. Whether the project is small or big, we have to do the right thing, which is to pay close attention to planning. The next point is, and the biggest risk is, the scope keeps changing. So what I've seen for small projects is, because small projects are generally taken for granted, because we just say it is small because maybe the amount of persons that are dedicated to it, you know. And so what happened, the project is not planned properly. And so throughout the project, there is just scope creep along the way, you know. And these small projects turns into a big project because of scope creep. So one of the major challenges is to ensure that it's very important to do our scope statement, you know, to do our scope management plan from early, which is a part of our planning, to ensure that we avoid these things. Now, I'm not saying that we need to overplan or become too detailed, because sometimes we're doing a project and we don't have enough details at that stage when we get the project. But there are some basic steps that we need to take. Say, for example, there could be a business case, there could be a project charter, there could be some initial information, some assumptions, you know, some inputs that we're able to discuss with the sponsors, the key project stakeholders. We could use these to start building our team until we get further in the project when more details become available and we plan accordingly. So this is a process that is generally called roll wave planning. Is sometimes when we're in, whether the project is small or the project is big, you know, we get stuck on what we know. But as I said before, project management is about being a servant leader, you know, being a facilitator. So you're not biased to any one thing. So you are a servant to your team and you allow them, you listen to them, you facilitate their concerns. If there are conflicts, you try to resolve conflicts. A lot of persons think conflict, you know, is a bad thing for a project, but conflict has its pros and it has its cons, you know, because out of conflict, you can get lessons learned to create solutions for your project. So it's very important not to get stuck on what you know in a project because you're the project manager, but it's very important for you to be open, to be that servant leader, that facilitator. Can move to the next slide. So with that said, we've talked about how we consider a project small or big, you know, and we talked about the challenge, you know, the main challenge, you know, scope management, planning, you know. So how to lead, you know, how to lead projects successfully, whether small or big. So whether the project is small or the project is big, as I said before, we still need to do the right thing. So, as I said, a servant leader, you know, we lead by example or we can lead by influence. So you listen to your team, you lead from the front, you show others the way, you mentor, you coach, you listen, you know, you are empathetic where necessary, you know. And also in every project, you will have difficult times, you know, and it's very important as even the project manager to remain calm and able to provide solutions, because you will see situations where if as the project manager, you're not calm and your team is seeing this, this could create panic in the camp, and this could create distrust in the team, you know, and there could be a breakdown, you know. So it's very important we need to be mindful of this, you know. And another thing too is the project manager, you know, the leaders, they have to set a general direction, a clear path, you know, for the team to follow, you know. So you create this collaborative kind of environment where persons can learn from each other, you know, persons can share with each other, because in every project you will have everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, but it's very important for persons to feel comfortable within the team and within the clear direction that is set out by the project manager, you know, to feel comfortable in that space, to become the best version of themselves that will allow the unit to deliver in the best possible way. Another point to lead successfully is, I think, and even though we're seeing a lot of, we're in a time of innovation, you know, so we have a lot of projects that are being run, and it's because the organization is moving towards business transformation, which is innovation, digital transformation, which is innovation. So as a project manager, you should also be like a business manager, you know, so you should be able to sell the vision. So the strategic goal of the company, you know, whether that might be coming from the business case or you have a project, you should be able to sell that to the team so you're able to get buy-in. And again, as I said, communication plan, you know, what are the communication platforms that we will be using? You know, how many persons, you know, how do you communicate to the different persons in the project? You know, what are their likes? What are their dislikes? You will adapt to them. You will adapt your vision in order to rally the troop, you know, to keep pace of the project. As I said before, a servant leader. So you coach and you empower the team, you facilitate communication. And all this will happen because of the great character that you have, doing projects, being resilient, being determined, and being able to facilitate your teams in the toughest of times. Can move forward. So the final slide here is, so we've talked about how to lead the projects successfully, but this is not possible without, best practices and having successful factors, because leading projects, small or big, is very important to have your best practices and your success factors. So as I said before, whether you're doing a small project or a big project, you have to solve problems, you have to make decisions, and you have to handle conflicts. And a very important point I want to share here is, a lot of persons will ask, how do I, develop best practices, or how do I, develop some success factors? But, just by being there in the trenches with your team, just by doing multiple projects, just by facilitating, just by being in different situations at different times, you will build that experience that will culminate into that best practices that will maximize your chance of success with your team. So this is something that will just happen over time because of your resilience. So don't worry about, okay, I've just started this project, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do, just trust me, just by being a servant leader and just building a relationship, you'll be surprised how much you will know over time by just working with these teams, so in that way, you'll be able to build your best practice and your success factors. Another thing too is holding kickoff meeting, building and motivating and empowering the project team. So I would recommend that in every project, you try to have some kickoff meeting with either your internal clients or your external clients, or your internal and external clients, because at this stage, this is where you're aligning all the expectations and you're getting the necessary handshake to move forward with the plans that you have in place. This is the stage where you're actually sharing the baseline of where the project is. So down the line, if there are any changes, it's easy for you to measure any change against your baseline that was clearly communicated with your internal or your external clients. And again, I must stress this point. Communication, very important. We're dealing with stakeholders, we're dealing with people, human beings, it's very important to communicate. And, basic rule for communication is, team meetings, whether that might be a brainstorming session, whether that might be weekly meetings, but bi-weekly meetings, monthly meetings. Within your environment, you and your team should be able to come up with a way that works best for your team, whether work sessions or something like this. And another thing too, small or big projects. Generally, it is said that, small projects are more fluid, just by the name small project. But as I said before, if you don't plan properly, then a small project can become a big, complex project. A big project can feel like a small project because you're doing the right things. Your initiation, your planning, and how you work with your teams. Recognizing the project team members for their contribution. This is very, very important. I mean, as I said before, it doesn't matter what is happening in the project. It's very important to motivate people, to make them feel a part of something great. And there are many different ways how you can do that. You can do that by communication. You could do that by rewarding. You could do that by exchanging knowledge. You know, you could do that by having meetings. You could do that by giving them different assignments, alternating the assignments. You know, you could do that by promotion. So it's very important. And also at the end of a project, it is also very important too, you know, to recognize team members, you know. So because you will always have future projects and you never know when you will need to call up on these team members. So it's very important to build relationships, you know, and reward persons, allow them to get your buy-in and allow them to feel a part of something great. And then finally, failure on a large project might get a second chance, you know. So I've personally seen this, you know. So if as I said before, you know, it's very important to define what's a large or a small project within your environment. But I've seen this where, you know, someone fails on a large project, they're assigned to a smaller project because it's a small project, the notion of a small project, you know. However, if that same person failed on a small project, there is no more project for that person, because the notion is that it's a small project, so it's simple, it's easy. And it doesn't work like this. As I said before, project management is an art and it's a science. So we must do the right thing. A small project can become a big complex project, and a big complex project can feel like a small project. Can we go to the next slide, Karina? Yeah, that's it. So thanks again, guys. So any questions?
I am seeing some questions in the chat and some comments. Just want to let persons know that you are able to unmute your mic and speak, but what you could do is to raise your hand. We'll acknowledge you and you'll be able to go on and unmute your mic. In the interim, while you prepare your questions, Ali's asking, what about project assessments, long-term values for large enterprises? I'm not sure if they want to come on and ask the question because I'm not quite understanding it. I'm not sure if you understand it, Mark.
Can you please repeat?
It just says, what about project assessments, long-term values for large enterprises?
Yeah, so as I said before, it's very important to have your criteria in place. I mean, how you run projects. I mean, what is a small project? What is a large project? And as I said before, once you know this, it's easier for the organization or the business to prioritize and deliver. So, you know, as a person rightfully said, this is generally done by a project assessment approach. So different companies, different businesses, they have their own way of assessing their projects.
All right, no problem. Thank you. All right, before we move to the next question in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and allow Junior to unmute. Let me go right ahead, Junior.
Thank you. I don't remember the name, but thank you for acknowledging me. Hi, Mark. Wonderful presentation, very useful. I have two questions. The first one, well, you know, we're living in unprecedented times, so I have to ask this one. How has COVID-19 impacted or affected the project management landscape? And are you seeing evidence of any evidence suggesting that new traits, new skills are needed to make a project successful? No, relative to how it was back then. I don't know if the question is clear enough.
Yes,
I feel
sure. Yes, it's clear, Juna. Thanks for that. It's a very good question.
And that's the first
So,
one. I'll just wait until you finish responding to this one and then ask the second.
yeah. So what I've realized since the pandemic, Juna, is that project management, the pandemic has brought us closer to the human side of project management, as I said, working with people. So let me just give you an example. I've worked on projects where, you know, the person is working remotely, and the person is very competent. So competence is without question, you know. I mean, other leaders, they have difficulty working with this person. But what I realize is that because of the pandemic, you know, and so many things are happening, you have to take another approach. And that approach was empathetic leadership. So you try to find out what is happening in the person's life, you know, try to build a relation, what is happening, what is, you know, and you know, you might have a platform within the company that you use, say Microsoft Teams, and everybody communicate there. But maybe with this person, you need to communicate on WhatsApp and build that relationship, you know. Maybe it's a call, you know. As I said before, the person is already competent. So competence is but it's about communication management, stakeholder management. In stakeholder management, the interests of the stakeholder and how they want to communicate. They want you to communicate with them. How can you influence them, you know?
Okay, thank you, Mark. That was very insightful. Thank you so much. And the final question. I'm not in the project management field. I'm in the financial field. But as you know, the financial industry takes on a lot of projects, especially as it relates to funding, whether that's via debt or whatever financing. So I have to work closely with project managers. Yes. But what I've realized is that, you know, companies that would fund projects, or managers, are not managers, but persons who are responsible for funding the projects, they have developed a greater appetite for, well, not appetite, but they have become more inclined to exhibit hesitation as it relates to funding these projects. You know, I guess because there's a growing level of uncertainty in the environment. How can you reassure these persons that, you know, despite the volatility that exists right now, despite everything that's happening, how can you reassure, or what steps can be taken to help to reassure providers of capital that, you know, you can still be successful in this execution?
Great question, Juna. So you had asked a question before, skills, you know, skills that a project manager should, what are some skills that project managers are actually taking on these days? And so I think a critical skill that I've seen is business management. You know, so a project manager should be a leader. A project manager should be a strategic manager. A project manager should be a business manager, and a project manager should have some technical project management skills, you know. So, you know, as you mentioned there, I mean, difficulty funding. So what I've seen is that a lot of companies are moving towards what you call like a project management office. Some companies call it project management office. Some companies call it the center of excellence. Some companies call it the value management office. And so this is a department or a unit that pretty much standardized within the context of the organization how projects are run. So, you know, there are layers before you do a project. So you have the portfolio. That's where the strategic decisions are made. And then from the portfolio, you have your program. So you have your programs of projects. And then after the program, you have your projects, you know. So at that level, a lot of organizations, they develop what you call like a center of excellence, where they will know, you know, what kind of project is this? How do we know what kind of project is this based on project assessment? If this project is a small project, how does it impact the bottom line of the business? you know, and all these things. And they will have systems in place and methodologies how they measure and determine this. So it's easier for key stakeholders to fund the projects. So that's what I've seen. But, you know, a lot of companies, businesses are still getting there because the Center of Excellence is just a different department that handles this, and it takes some time. It takes a mature culture a lot of times to build up and to develop this.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for your response. Very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Junior, thanks for your questions. Moving right along, there's a comment here from Teresina. She was just saying, yes, timeline and effective evaluation over that time is, you know, very important to project management. So that was a comment, and Jermaine is saying, you know, strategies, what are strategies for getting back on track once things go wrong with a big or small project?
Okay, thanks for that, Jermaine Lawrence. Shout out Jermaine. Yeah, so as I said before, one of the key things, as I mentioned before, the kickoff meeting, it's very important to have some kind of kickoff meeting. We generally call it as project manager kickoff meeting, but you can call it anything that you want, you know, but that meeting is the meeting where you set your baseline and align all expectations with your key players. So say, for example, you have your high-level plan and you have some milestones with your Gantt chart and so forth, right? You agree, say, okay, by next week, Friday, we're supposed to deliver this particular cup. However, if it's not if we are not able to deliver it, it's because of these risks or these constraints. You will have some high-level plan that is agreed and aligned. Well, as I said before, it's a project. So initially you have less details than as you move forward in the project. So say next week come and it's because of one of the listed risk or constraints why you're not able to deliver. Then the key players already understood that the project went off track because of one of these risks. So the best way to balance that is to determine what's the impact or what's the root cause. And then from there, it will be easier for you to measure against that baseline that you had discussed with your stakeholders. And what I've seen most of the times, it's easier to get buy-in that way versus no kickoff meeting, no proper planning. And then when something happens, you're going to the client or you're going to one of your key stakeholders and there's nothing to measure. People like to support something that they're able to measure.
All right, thank you for that response, Mark. And Castillo is saying, as a PM hailing from the Caribbean, Jamaica to be specific, how difficult is it to compete on the international level, landing big projects specifically?
Oh, thanks, Castillo. Is it possible for Castillo to be a little bit more specific? I'm not, because he's saying, how difficult is it?
Like for you, how difficult is it to compete on the international level as a project manager? You know, to get onto big projects and to you know, to build that confidence in those who are recruiting you for the service. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you hear me talking about being a servant leader, you know, I eat, breathe, sleep, servitude, you know. So, you know, I'm PMP certified. Why I became PMP certified? I was doing projects before. I was being blamed wrongfully for some of my leadership styles. You know, I've seen a lot of persons being cheated out on projects for no reason, and that's because we didn't have things properly defined and so forth. So I became PMP certified because I wanted to understand, I wanted to level the playing field, and I wanted to understand how projects are run, you know, at the international level, including Jamaica and the Caribbean. So I wanted that gold standard to speak that language, like someone, say, in Pakistan or someone in India. You know, I just wanted to understand how it is. So this is one of the approach that I actually use to level the playing field, and it helps me to network, and it helps me to work on projects with other persons from other territories, because they see that I'm PMP certified, they see that I'm Scrum certified, and they see that I'm talking the language. So it's easier for them to connect, you know. So that's pretty much how.
Okay, Mark. So over time, you've definitely just developed your craft by being properly certified and equipped, basically, to come.
Equipped.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you can have like years of experience. You know, you can still connect. There's nothing is wrong with that. But sometimes when you're packaged, and by that I mean like you can speak the language when you're in certain situations. So if there is a cost overrun or something, you know, and just the way how you deport yourself in a conversation, or how you present a finding, you know, it's easier for persons to relate to you on the other side, you know.
All right, thank you so much for that. And Mikhail is saying, how do you strike a balance between margin protection and customer engagement? So margin protection on the PM side and customer engagement on the sales side. How do you strike that balance?
How do you strike a side and customer engagement? Can I ask if the customer engagement, Mikhail is referring to the customer satisfaction index?
Hey, Mark, what's up? So technically, yes. So usually, so I'm a project manager. Also,
Yes.
I mean, I know if I'm US, so you know me, Mark, right? From
Yes,
physics.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah. So basically, I'm an operations manager. I've been to the project management aspect, and there's always a headbutting between operations, project management, and sales, right? So like usually the project managers are usually hard on margin, because you got to make sure that we hit that target, and sales also always want to give things away. So like so how do you kind of strike that balance between hitting that number, get the margin, and kind of customer engagement in terms of making customers happy for return business and so. So it's always a balance to strike. Like how your experience as you struck that balance.
Yes, thanks for that, Mikhail. So one of the things that I did, when I was working at Ericsson, I won't go into too much details. I realized that, when I was in the projects, there was just so much, things weren't aligned properly, so many disagreements. And when I go on site, the customer is saying something different from our plan within the business unit. But then I realized that, how can we fix this? And I think, in project management, right, you have pre-sales and you have the implementation, and then you have the post-sales, right? So what I did was that I became more involved in pre-sales. So in some projects, you will have the account manager, which is in charge of the pre-sales. So all they do is just pretty much sell and bid, And so I started to build relationships there. And then what I realized is that they start to involve us in the planning. So even for some of the bids and the planning, like in terms of doing it their own way, they would ask us, okay, from lessons learned from your other projects, how do we do this? Or how should we pitch this? Or how do we sell this? And that's how, we became very close. Just by reaching out, just try building this relationship. And then I realized that I eventually, eliminate this kind of disagreement and side with the client, because how they sell is how they think about how we're deploying the projects. But before, they were just selling and they weren't thinking about how we were deploying the projects. So again, I said it's just being a servant leader and building the relationship, like seeing that person, maybe the account manager or something, you became good friends, and they just start to, they like how you work, they like how you operate, and then it's easy for you to induce your things as to how you would want them to align with what you're doing. I don't know if that helps, Mikhail.
Yeah, so proper engagement is what you're saying, like being in alignment earlier on the stage, so whereby you guys can collaborate better. It kind of helps that session. So therefore they don't oversell, because sometimes sales are used to overselling,
Yes.
Not necessarily understanding the technical aspect of things, just to kind of make that sale. And there's always becomes a disconnect when it comes to the implementation of the project, because they expect something that is not necessarily what's going to be delivered. So understood. Well answered. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, no worries. And one more thing before you go, Michael, and for post-sales, as you know, it's very important when you close a project. A lot of times we follow down to the T, the PMI standard, but we can follow the PMI standard and we never develop our lessons learned with our team internally and the client, and then we still have problems moving into business development. So in order to avoid this problem into post-sales, it's very important to develop a lessons learned from the completed project and then transition that into post-sales. So you create better practices.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Welcome, man.
All right, thank you for that, Mark. And Abigail, this is the last question I'm seeing. Abigail is asking, if you do not have a project management background, can you give a short example of a project and the various stages or processes to be taken to achieve the goal? Like this, I guess, an example of what a project would look like.
Yes, thanks for your question, Abigail. So let me just start out by saying, Abigail, that, because, right now we're all in a pandemic, right? And, previously we were used to the Waterfall Method, which is the PMI method. So the traditional way was you initiate a project, you plan it, then you execute and monitor this project, and then you close this project following this simple process, right? But then there's a new way of doing projects now where more clients, we're in a value management economy now where clients are more looking at value, and they don't want to see that value when the project closed. They want to see that value continuously. So we are now talking about agile, Scrum, doing projects in an open way with teams and so forth, So I think for someone who, doesn't have any experience just starting out, I think the first step I would advise is to start with the traditional way, because the traditional way teaches you how to do things properly. And then it's easier for you to improvise. So for example, in anything that you're doing in life, you have to initiate, maybe you brainstorm the idea, maybe you come up with some ideas or something. Then you plan it, you create a plan, your scope, human resources, and then you execute, and while you're executing, you're monitoring, you're checking to see if your quality is good, if everything is going according to plan, and you deliver. So I think starting out with experience, you should know this first. And then once you know this, it's easy for you to adapt to any other methodology, whether it's Scrum, whether it's Six Sigma, whether it's Lean. It's easier for you because you have the foundation, which is the traditional way of doing it this way. So you're more adaptable. So I think this is the best way. Is that okay for you, Abigail? You're most welcome.
All right. So thank you, Mark, for your response, and thank everyone for asking your questions. Before I go, Castillo, how can you tell that a project has failed?
Okay, Castillo, this is a very good question. So, before Castillo, when I started out, I used to think that a project failed when something happens with the schedule, or something happened with the scope, or something happens with the budget, But over time, I realized, Castillo, it's, again, as I said, it's about work. It's about talking to your key stakeholders to understand what is it that they need, what is it that they want. You have projects where you're on time, you're on schedule, the budget is okay, but the customer satisfaction is not good. And why is that? Because you weren't continuously listening to the client to hear what is it that they wanted from the project. You have projects where the client doesn't care about the money, or they don't care about the scope is good, but maybe for them, they just probably wanted to see a good quality product. you know. So, you know, it's to know how to determine if a project is successful or not is to speak with your client, and your client can be internal or your client can be external, you know, just to speak continuously doing this, try to understand. Again, I say stakeholder management, communication management, you know, what is it that they want? What is the strategic plan? What are they looking for? What kind of product? You know, continuously speaking to them, and then working, collaborating with your team to work towards what they need. Is that okay, Castillo?
He added on to that to ask, in the event that there's a failure, how do you measure the loss?
Okay, so there are a lot of tools out there, Castillo. As I mentioned before, project management has a lot to do with tools too. You know, a lot of organizations don't use tools because maybe it's expensive or maybe they don't have a mature culture. So you, for example, Microsoft Project, that's a very good team that most persons use, and you can plan your project. So you have your work breakdown structure, you have your Gantt charts, your start dates, your end date, your task. You can simulate your budget, you know, everything that you need for the project. It will tell you whether your project is on track or off track, you know, that way. But you know, you can measure many different losses, you know, depends on what you're looking for. You know, loss in terms of your budget, loss in terms of your scope, your quality, you know, many different. But you have different tools, and it's up to the organization to determine what tool they are most comfortable with.
All right, thank you so very much. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So on that note, we can wrap up. I don't know if you'd like to add anything, Mark, before we go ahead and close.
Yes, so I mean, it was a pleasure to be here, Karina, and thanks again to my esteemed audience for having me, you know, and this was a great session, you know, and I just want to say, I mean, from my experience, project management is about stakeholder management, people management, and communication, you know. Everything else will fall into place, you know. It's very important, stakeholder management, people management, especially right now where a lot of us are working in remote situations. It's very important to master that human resource side of us.
All right, thank you so much, Mark. So you heard everyone, the key is to plan, to communicate, and to manage your stakeholder expectations, stakeholders internal and external, and to be customer-centric. So that's our takeaway for tonight. Thank you so much, Mark, for a great presentation. The chat is buzzing. You know, everybody's thanking you for a great presentation, very informative. And I just want to let the audience know that, you know, as I said, this is going to be a monthly webinar. So please look out for the next webinar. Please look out for, you know, the flyer for that to join us for the next one. If there's anything in particular that you'd like Mark to cover, you can definitely send that information or that request to me via email. The webinar will, as I said before, be archived on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in rewatching or sharing it, then you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, UWI Alumni, and you can access it there. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Have a good evening, a good night, a good morning, wherever you are. And we'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Yes.